I actually was one of those foremen. I was made foreman when I was 23 years old, and it was tough.
Hey everybody, welcome to the ProfitDig Live Show. We've got another exciting topic here for you today where we're doing some responses to user comments. We did this once already and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's always fun.
Yeah.
We thought we'd do it again. I'm Jeff Givens here with ProfitDig. We've got Chris Work and Jeff Spencer.
Hey, guys.
Hope you guys are having a great day today. We had a user, Brent Baker, 1891, asks us, how does a new foreman without a ton of experience deal with older, more experienced crew members questioning and second-guessing their decisions?
Well, Jeff, you might be able to speak to this.
And that's a paraphrase of his question.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's up, we're clear.
Yeah, because it was a very long.
It was long. We appreciate the comment.
We'll
Sure.
down. We thank you so much.
I actually was one of those foremen. I was made foreman when I was 23 years old, and it was tough. Especially, I had an operator that was, and his name is Malcolm Bunch. And when coming up in the business for the first couple of years, I actually worked under Malcolm for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he's kind of stepped back from a foreman role. He wanted to get back into operating, wanted to kind of reduce some of his responsibilities and stress level. Mm-hmm. So he was actually one of my operators. So, it was intimidating for me to be that young foreman and knowing that, hey, I used to take orders from this guy, and work under him. Mm-hmm. But also most everybody on my crew, well, not most, all of them were older than me and had been, working together like a well-oiled machine, for a while. And so it was tough, to gain their respect. It was like some of them would do, what I ask of them, and others like, they'd go ahead and do kind of what they want, and, had to kind of find that fine line. I didn't want to get my boss involved to make me look like I couldn't do it on my own, I wanted to handle the situation.
Right.
And it actually took me to the point of, I had this one particular guy, he just kept on butting heads with me. And, I told him several times, at the end of the day, I said, it's my responsibility. If something goes wrong or something doesn't work out, it's my responsibility. If we lose production or don't finish this job on time, it's on me. It's not on y'all. It's on me. And didn't matter, how I tried to explain things to him. He just was not going to accept me being a younger guy, giving him orders. And I told them all, I never asked a man that worked for me to do something I wouldn't do myself. I'd been there. I'd done every aspect of what they were doing. And I finally fired him in front of his, the other employees, people that he'd been working with, his friends or whatever for years. And once I did that, I actually lost sleep over it because he was a good employee. Mm-hmm. But I knew in my heart, that this wasn't going to work for me if I could not get him under control.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't get him under control. So the only other option I had was to get rid of him. And once I made that decision and fired him, he still would not take it. He was like, you can't fire me. So had to get my boss out there and told him what I'd done. Boss told him, he told you was fired. He runs the show out here, hit the road.
Yeah. Well, that was the question I had. So as a foreman role, you may not always have that ability,
You may, that's been years ago, but back then that's the way we done it, it's like the foreman was in charge of his crew. He had to build his crew, had to maintain his crew. If he lost a member or got rid of a member, he had to replace that member. And so, it's very intimidating. And to answer your question, it's really hard to gain the respect. It can be done. Hopefully it can be done without having to get rid of a crew member. But, in my situation, once I made that initial step, as hard as it was, and I knew all the guys because I'd worked with them over the years. Mm-hmm. But once I made the decision, that I had to do this, I gained the respect of everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at that point, they knew, hey, this is real. He's got the authority, and
Yeah. So
sometimes you have to flex a little muscle.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame it had to come to that.
It did.
I know.
Sure.
I know. I've managed a crew of people, and some of them have been more experienced than me in different areas.
Right.
And, for me, it's making sure that they understand, yes, there is a hierarchy here. That being said, I recognize the fact that some of these people have better experience in certain areas or more experience, and that there's not always one solution to a problem, right? And for me, the big thing is having that open line of communication. Now, you can't spend hours and hours dealing with every little topic.
Sure.
But if there's a reasonable concern about, like, a foreman giving some instruction to a crew, to an operator, and they're thinking, man, this just is not going to work out. I think even as the operator, you have a responsibility to speak up, right? Like, because you both work you're on the same team.
Same team, yeah.
Right. But there's a classy way to do that, right? Like, you can be at odds with each other. And it sounds like this gentleman was just kind of hard to deal with, right?
It was, and he was actually an operator, and he, in his mind, the foreman that they had known had left, and Malcolm, no, I said had left. He hadn't left. The foreman Malcolm had left that position and wanted to be an operator. So they had no one to fill the role. He was still filling the role till they found someone, but his heart wasn't in it. So they were kind of idling along, getting through the day every day, but, they really wasn't getting all the production in one, because in his mind, he's like, I've already told him I'm stepping back. I'm going to be an operator. And that's what I want to do. And he would just kind of drive a truck, all the tools and stuff, and kind of let the guys do what they wanted to do. And so production went way down. So whenever they gave me the crew,
just kind of aimlessly wandering out there.
The operator.
Absolutely.
I think that particular operator had sat around, thinking about it. He's like, well, I've been with this crew for X amount of years or whatever. They're probably going to offer the position to me. And then when I came in to do it, it was, a shock to him. It's like, I can't believe they didn't offer this position to me.
Well, and that can be hurtful, right?
Yeah, it can
You feel like you've put in the effort, you've got the experience, and there is a sense of loyalty. Like, I've given a lot to this company. I wish they would give back. Like, you can understand his perspective,
Right.
but there's a difference in having a perspective and then just being an ass.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like,
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, especially like you said, the loss of production. I mean, someone new comes in, it's also difficult too, because the new guy always wants to make that positive impression very early on. And so, he's expecting a lot of everyone there on the job. But over time, you get everybody steered in the right direction where everybody's going to get pay increases because production is better. I mean, it's.
Yeah, and there were several times, that I actually went to Malcolm, like, Malcolm, I'm at a loss. What should I do here? How should I handle this situation? I didn't know everything. I was green. I didn't know everything. But it was really fortunate, that I had him on my crew, because, if I did stutter, a little bit, or not sure of something, or got off on figuring out some grades, or something, or changing some grades, he was there. I could go to him.
it's kind of a mentor.
It was a good mentor for me, a good learning situation. But I don't want it to sound like, this was like an immediate thing that I'm talking about. I mean, me and this guy, we went round and round for several weeks. I was trying to give him every opportunity and trying to figure out ways that I could implement. I actually was like nervous every morning going into work. Like,
That feels off.
Yeah. I've got to deal with this guy. How am I going to handle him today? It just got to where it was to the point, I was either going to have to quit and do something else, or go back to operating, or start a fresh crew or something, because I just, to the point I couldn't deal with it anymore. And at that point, it was like it just hit me, like, he's not going to be a team player while he's working for me. He's just got it out. He's not going to be happy with anything I do. And, as bad as I hate to, I've got to alleviate this problem. I've got to get rid of it, and so
That'll start to bleed over into the other guy.
Right. Yeah. And, if I keep letting, that's what I thought, if I keep letting this guy get by with calling my bluff and doing things that he wants to do instead of what I tell the crew to do, then it's not going to be long. They're going to follow suit. They're going to start doing what he does.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
You'll just be a fake foreman.
right. And I'm not saying that's going to be Brandon's issue, or whoever he may be, asking a question about. I'm not saying that's going to be, the same issue with you, but I will agree with you. It's going to be a tough road to hoe because you got to earn their respect, and you've got to strategically figure out how to do that in as short amount of time as possible. If not, you're going to lose your crew. They're not going to follow anything you want to do.
Yeah.
And you got to show them as well that, hey, I do have some knowledge. I do have capabilities. And when you don't, without them so much seeing you, try to reach out and get help somewhere or another, to help figure out those questions or those tasks, that can help you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, if we had to kind of circle back around to the question and put it into perspective, from what I've heard us talking about here, try to establish the hierarchy early, try to show them that you're there to help the company. Right. Work with the people that are like in opposition to the situation as best you can.
Yeah, as best you can.
Right. And worst case scenario, if it comes to that, you might have to consider getting rid of that employee. Right. But in your own individual journey, like, it's good to establish that, hey, I'm not totally green here. I've got experience. I'm new to this role, but I'm not new to this game. Okay. Right. So you can trust what I have to say. And if you don't trust what I have to say, come explain it to me why you think there's a better way to do something. And if I agree with it, I might choose to do it your way. If I disagree, you're going to have to accept that. Right. Because I have this objective to meet, and you're my crew, and I want you to be as productive and as satisfied as possible.
Absolutely, yeah. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if their performance or the conflict is detrimental to the performance as a team, well, that impacts everyone.
Yes. And they weren't dealing with the owner of the company or our boss. They were dealing with me, but I was given a task at hand to do each and every day. I had to get so much production every day, and it was up to me to figure out how to make that happen. And with this guy fighting me, every step of the way, it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And I wasted a few weeks, trying to make it work with him, several weeks, and I couldn't do it. But there is a little bit of irony to the story, because it was 5 or 6 years later, he actually came back and applied to the company for a job again, and they put him on my crew. We worked great together.
Yeah.
We worked for like 5 or 6 years. He stayed on my crew.
Yeah. Well, I like, grass is great on the other side. At the time, he probably wanted out of there. I thought, I'm going to go somewhere else. And then,
And I think it's maybe what happened. I don't know for sure. I can't speak for the guy, but he may have went to other places thinking he was going to excel and grab a foreman's position, and I don't think he ever got that. And so I think he just kind of accepted for right now. I'm a good operator, and that's what I want to continue to be for right now. Is a good operator. Yeah, and he was.
Well, good. So it sounded like eventually it all worked out.
Yeah.
So that's good. Well, all right. Well, hey. Brent Baker, 1891. We sincerely appreciate your comment, and we hope this is helpful. We're going to post this back to you so you can view it yourself. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Listen, if you're looking for the world's easiest to use construction, bidding, and job costing tool, check us out, ProfitDig.com. Oh, while you're here, subscribe to the channel, like the video. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.